Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the Brazilian government for organizing this important forum to discuss the steps that must be taken to protect children and adolescents from the abhorrent crime of online child sexual abuse and exploitation. I am grateful for this opportunity to be with you today, and I am hopeful that progress is possible. Together, we can unite and answer the urgent call to protect children from the criminals who use technology to harm, abuse, and sexually exploit them. Over the past 6 months, our global community has been engaged in fighting a truly unprecedented health emergency. The coronavirus pandemic has transcended borders and impacted families, businesses, and communities, and of course, our way of life across the globe. Yet what many are not aware of is that under the cover of this pandemic lies another, as insidious and destructive as COVID-19, and that's the pandemic of child abuse and online exploitation, which is attacking our children from within their own homes. It is a crime which is now impacting millions of children all over the world, and there is no medicine, mask, or vaccine powerful enough to stop it. As the pandemic raged through our communities and lockdowns were enforced, digital connectivity uplifted us, keeping our friends and families close, our businesses operating, and thankfully, our children occupied. Yet this very same technology facilitates unprecedented new forms of sexual abuse crimes against children. And we must acknowledge that the social media platforms that connect, inspire, and empower us are also enabling adults with a sexual interest in children to groom and abuse them. And technology helps them document their sexual depravity in digital images and videos that live on the internet. They even document through live streaming depicting unspeakable crimes against children. The internet was intended to be a positive force in society. I know because I helped build some of the world's leading internet companies as an early executive at Google, Bebo, AOL, and Facebook. And as these new communications platforms were becoming ubiquitous in our lives, I believed then that the products and services we were creating would bring the world together, would connect us with information and ideas, and foster understanding and tolerance. I believe that our inventions would liberate society, democratize access to information, and bring opportunity to all. But looking back now, at best, I was naive. What we never anticipated were the unintended negative consequences of a connected society and the potential for our products to harm. When I witnessed the scale and impact of online child sexual abuse, I could not in good conscience look away. I had to take action. The tipping point for me came in late 2012, when I was summoned to a meeting at 10 Downing Street with the then Prime Minister, David Cameron. The Prime Minister was deeply troubled. He had just met with the grieving parents of April Jones, a little girl from South Wales who had been abducted, assaulted, and brutally murdered. Evidence confirmed that her killer had become addicted to child sexual abuse material online. Little April was just 5 years old. As a mother, it was an anguishing wake-up call. And as a leader in the tech industry, I felt sick that we weren't doing enough. We weren't doing enough and more to police more of our systems and rid them of this violent and illegal material. Something had to change, and I knew that I was in a unique position to drive that change. A few weeks later, I left my post at Facebook to join the UK government. First as the digital advisor to Prime Minister Cameron, and then leading the online harms and crimes agenda as the first Minister for Internet Safety and Security. Up until that point, for 25 years, my career had been guided by the belief that technology was a force for good. But that belief was shaken as I saw that same technology subverted again and again for evil. The same principles of scale and ubiquity that make the internet and its products so powerful were being leveraged to exploit and abuse children on a mass scale. I could not stand by another moment without doing something. That was why in 2014, I founded We Protect, to galvanize global attention to this unthinkable crime that was growing exponentially, and to unify a multi-stakeholder alliance to act in ways proportionate to the threat. 2 years later, we joined forces with the US-EU Global Alliance Against Child Abuse Online, and today, the We Protect Global Alliance has 97 countries, 32 of the biggest names in the global technology industry, and leading law enforcement agencies, and 34 civil society organizations and international institutions, all as members and partners fighting and combating this crime. Together, we have come a long way over the course of these 6 years, and yet we are still very much aware that we are nowhere toward finishing and achieving our goals. The very same sense of urgency that led me to found We Protect is still what motivates all of us. We must keep striving to do more, because the evil we are fighting inflicts unspeakable harm on children, and the threat multiplies each time a child connects. The pandemic of online child sexual abuse and exploitation is raging. In 2019 alone in the US, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children received 18.4 million referrals of child sexual abuse material by US technology companies. According to academic experts, at any given moment, there are an estimated 750,000 predators. These are offenders who are looking to connect with children online across the globe for sexual purposes. A highly alarming number, especially if we consider the total of 122 million more children have recently come online just in the past year, based on UNICEF's estimates. Now, 1 in 3 internet users today is a child. That is why the time has come to define policies and decisive action, and we must do it now. It's never been more urgent. We are not doing enough to stop this heinous crime, full stop. Sexual predators are stealing the innocence of our children and destroying the lives of millions of children each year. These criminals have become experts at obfuscation, and the sophistication of the networks they have created are all too often enabling them to elude detection and prosecution. If I can take a moment to explain how this abuse happens online and the forms it takes, I think it will be easy to understand how we can combat it. There are 2 primary routes for sexual predators and pedophiles to commit their crimes against children online. One is adults with sexual interest and intent interacting with children, and the other is the creation and sharing of online child abuse images and videos. Abusers use the apps and social platforms that we all use to groom, recruit, and exploit children en masse. They pose as young people to gain their trust. They convince them to record and create and share sexually explicit images of themselves, and they blackmail them to force them to engage in even more heinous acts with threats of exposure to their parents, teachers, and friends. It is an insidious circle of abuse that leads to depression, self-harm, and even suicide among its victims. And all too often, criminals lure children from the virtual world to meet them in the physical world, with devastating consequences. Another way this abuse manifests is through live streaming. This is live streaming on products we all use and we've been using extensively through the pandemic. But in this case, for as little as $15, children are offered up, and these heinous acts of sexual abuse are recorded and made available on demand. The other route of abuse is the creation of and sharing of online abuse images and videos. The sheer numbers of this tradecraft of sexual predators and pedophiles has resulted in a virtual marketplace of abuse. Last year only, there were a total of 13.3 million images processed by the Canadian Centre of Child Protection and 46 million images in Europol's repository. These abusers take their craft to the darkest corners of the web, where a global community of abusers are awaiting. They gain strength in each image or video of a child being harmed, and they compete with each other to claim the most extreme levels of sexual violence against a child. It is vile, it is disgusting, and it's the worst form of abuse imaginable. Children, even infants, abused for as little as a few dollars, and sometimes murdered for sexual edification. These are not lone individuals either, for offenders have found new ways to connect. They share tactics and strategies in their devastating acts of abuse and violence. They pay to watch live streaming together and online, and they share those images with each other using anonymous access and cryptocurrencies to obfuscate their crimes. And what's worse is direct access to kids in the privacy of their homes has never been easier. Young people have always been susceptible to dangerous influences when they are unsupervised. But today, young people are almost always on and connected, which makes the threat ever more pernicious. Today, children are groomed by people they have never met and would never have come into contact with if it weren't for the devices in their pockets. Predators meet young people through popular multiplayer games like Minecraft and Fortnite, or on social networks they use every day, like Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. And yet these internet platforms and device manufacturers continue to fail to stop abusers who hide behind anonymity to obfuscate their crimes. Regrettably, Facebook has announced its intent to deploy end-to-end encryption across all of its platform services. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children estimates that this decision alone will result in the loss of over 12 million reports of child sexual abuse material. And with that loss of those reports, 12 million cries for help will go unheard. Facebook alone reported nearly 60 million photos and videos in 2019. They represented 85% of the total reports. With this transition to end-to-end encryption, the company will no longer have visibility to these abusers, which will enable them to act with impunity. With an increase in reports of child sexual abuse material online, up 10,000% since 2004, our work to stop this heinous crime is ever more urgent. According to Hotline Network In Hope, 91% of child sexual abuse material accessed in 2018 depicted children under the age of 13, and in all too many cases, even infants. Intelligence evidence reveals that the crimes perpetrated against children are escalating at an alarming rate and at a level of brutality previously unimaginable. In one case, an offender joined an online private discussion group where new members were required to post abuse images as a rite of passage, as a token to participate. To engage in this group, this offender raped a 6-month-old girl and sexually assaulted a 2-year-old boy, uploading the footage onto an encrypted app and sharing it through a file sharing service. Moreover, the stress and the isolation of the current COVID-19 crisis has increased the risk of those with a sexual interest in children to act on these impulses. In the US alone, NCMEC registered a 106% increase in reports of suspected child sexual exploitation. This is on top of the 70 million cases of child abuse material reported in 2019, which represents a 50% increase over the 2018 figures. When I speak about this crime and how it is perpetrated, there is often a visceral reaction, a feeling of revulsion. My words are met with comments like, "That's just too horrible to think about. I can't hear that." But we must hear it, and we must see and acknowledge it for what it is and for the harm it causes. I have borne witness to these stories, and they will be forever etched in my mind. It is only through recognizing that these statistics represent real lives, real children, that within every case is a heartbreaking story of an abused child and an immense pain and suffering of that child and their families struggling to cope with the burden of how they might have prevented their children from falling prey to predators and feeling powerless to stop their suffering. Unprecedented threats demand unprecedented action. The COVID-19 pandemic has taught us that no one country alone can stop a virus from spreading. The entire world must mobilize to contain an outbreak and protect people from becoming ill. So why should halting the epidemic of child abuse and exploitation online be any different? Why is it that when it comes to the protection of children from online sexual exploitation, which is a global health emergency in its own right, just like COVID-19, why is this not forefront in our minds and forefront in our action? This pandemic of child sexual abuse material is also hitting the most vulnerable and the poorest in our society the hardest. We've all gathered here today because we care deeply about protecting children from the epidemic of online sexual exploitation. But we must recognize that expressing concern alone will not change the outcome. The world doesn't become safer because we wish it to be. It becomes safer when we make our children a priority and we act on their behalf. That's why I'm immensely proud of the work of the We Protect Global Alliance. And yet I cannot escape the feeling that the momentum of this crime is overtaking our capabilities and capacity to stop it. Nonetheless, it is in times like these that we must remember that where there is a shadow, there must also be light. We can do this together. I believe that technology fused with human intelligence and compassion can help transform society and remake and renew this world. But it's up to us to ensure that technology is used for good and provide a safe digital world for children to learn and to be inspired without fear. Technology is neither good nor evil. It's how we use it that makes a difference. The internet can be an ally. It can indeed improve young lives for the better, but only if we stand as a united front and commit to stopping online sexual abuse. This is a crime that transcends borders. No one country, company, NGO can tackle it alone. We must be united to protect all children everywhere. That is why at We Protect Global Alliance, we built together a model national response framework to support all countries in achieving a level of proficiency in fighting this crime. The model builds on many years of work and service by experts and practitioners. And while it does not seek to prescribe activities or set out a single approach, it describes the capabilities needed for effective child protection. It highlights good practice from countries that are deploying these practices and that are already delivering these capabilities. And it signposts organizations that can provide further guidance and support to countries seeking to develop or enhance their existing capabilities. By way of example, one of We Protect's most valued partners is the UNICEF and Violence Against Children Global Partnership and Fund. I had the pleasure of launching this fund at the United Nations in 2016 with an initial grant of £50 million from the UK government, and I am immensely proud of what the team have achieved. While We Protect serve as a global coordinator of all stakeholders involved in the fight, the End Violence Against Children Fund deploys targeted investments to strengthen national, regional, and global capabilities. In Latin America alone, the EVAC Fund is currently supporting projects aimed at identifying systems of prevention and response to online child sexual abuse and exploitation in Colombia, Peru, Costa Rica, El Salvador, and more. Most recently, EVAC and We Protect aligned in response to COVID-19, and what we accomplished together is a testament to the power of constructive digital collaboration. Every single initiative matters. Every coordinated policy counts. But to be successful, online child abuse and exploitation must be recognized and acted on by every single legislature around the world. Tackling this pervasive and transnational challenge is not easy, but I am encouraged by the progress made by the We Protect Global Alliance. However, there is still much more to be done. Last November, 2019, the European Parliament adopted a resolution on protecting children's right to have a safe experience online. This resolution, announced on the occasion of the 30th anniversary of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, calls on all member states to enhance cooperation between law enforcement authorities, civil society organizations, and to support organizations that fight child sexual abuse and exploitation online, such as the We Protect Global Alliance. Moreover, the EU has continued its commitment to fight against online child sexual abuse, and with the European Commission currently engaged in the preparation of an EU strategy to tackle this issue, which will focus on preventing the abuse from happening in the first place. I particularly welcome the proactive approach of the EU, as I believe that ending online CSE will heavily involve preventing harm before it happens, and not only working to address it when it does. Policing does play a role. However, for every offender we arrest, countless others remain. So you might be asking, why is the global community not more outraged and engaged on this crisis? Well, over the past 6 years, our world has been distracted by hyper-partisan disagreements, divisive narratives, and personality politics acted out on social media. Today, the conversation about regulating technology companies and limiting their sphere of influence has become confused and partisan. What's more, the issues caused by technology are so numerous and multidimensional that it's difficult for any policymaker or legislator to keep up. Unregulated technology is colliding with societal norms and values, and it's threatening privacy and security. It's altering our perception of truth, and it's algorithmically amplifying hatred and extremism. The very communication platforms we've come to rely on in our digital lives have evolved and now threaten safety and stability and the rule of law. With this as a backdrop, the global dialogue about protecting children from exploitation online has often lost oxygen. And in this vacuum, technology companies have continued their meteoric growth in scope and in profits. And yet those with the responsibility for policing their applications, their operating systems and platforms to rid them of this vile crime have all too often been given a free pass. Of course, I recognize that innovations like encryption are vital tools to protect privacy and security. But children need to be safe, and they have a right to their privacy as well. They must be protected. We must not give offenders the cover to go undetected and unpunished. I cannot see any apparent commercial reason for doing this, and equally, there has been no user-driven revolt demanding that all apps be encrypted end-to-end. And yet, despite enormous pressure being placed on Facebook by governments around the world, they persist with this policy. When it comes to big tech companies, the platitudes of good intentions have fallen far short of the actions needed to stop this heinous crime. The time has come to prioritize the safety of children over theoretical and vague notions of privacy for all. The right for children to be safe from harm is paramount, and it must be protected. Would you let your child ride in a car without a seatbelt? Would you give them medicine that's not been tested? Of course not. Then why do we let them use apps and games and services that they are at risk of falling prey to predators? A timely announcement recently has brought a sliver of hope. The Technology Coalition, a group of leading tech giants who in March proclaimed their support and commitment for 11 voluntary principles to counter online sexual abuse and exploitation, has now backed a plan to eradicate this crime. But promises have been made before, and promises can be broken, which leads me to my final point. If we are to safeguard young lives, we must sustain our scrutiny and ensure that statements of intent and press releases are translated into clear and measurable results. Companies must be held accountable and take full responsibility for the safety of online users on their services. We must join forces together and demand adoption of regulation in all countries to ensure that companies whose products enable children to connect and share information have safety built directly in. In particular, we should demand the implementation of principles like the Safety by Design principles developed by the e-Safety Commissioner in Australia. And if those safety mechanisms fail, we must hold companies that build those products and profit from them to account. Today, I close by asking you all to join me in demanding a different outcome for children. Our children have a right to a safe and happy childhood. They have a right to be guided and shielded and loved, to connect, to learn, to dream without fear, or to be targeted or abused by predators as they explore the digital world. Their right is our responsibility, and it's up to us to stop the tragic consequences of child abuse online and keep humanity's children safe from those who would harm and exploit them. We must call for change from the technology giants, betraying a generation through inaction or indifference. We must speak for the voiceless, bring hope to the hopeless, and fight for the powerless. We must protect the right to a safe and happy childhood. Thank you.
Ao vivo.
Lady Shields, thank you so much for your presentation. Muito obrigada pela sua apresentação.